At breakfast, my husband threw hot coffee in my face when I refused to give his sister my credit card and yelled, "She'll be home later. Give her your things or get out." When the opportunity presented itself, I took all my belongings out of the house and left. He had no idea what I would do with his life after that. Before we continue to the beginning of the whole story, I would like to ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can receive all of our revenge videos about empowered women. As the early morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow over the kitchen, I found myself nursing a cup of tea, its steam rising in slow swirls, much like the turmoil inside me. The silence in the room was palpable, heavy with the remnants of last night's heated exchange. Across the breakfast table Owen sat, his features tight with barely concealed irritation. The air between us was charged, each second stretching longer than the last. "I just don't understand why you can't see it from my perspective, Bella," Owen began again, his tone a mixture of pleading and frustration. "Marie is struggling. She's family. We can't just turn our backs on her when she needs us the most." Sighed, feeling the familiar tug of sympathy for Marie, mingled with a stronger sense of caution. "Owen, we've been down this road before. How many times have we stepped in to pull her out of trouble?" "It's always the same story," I replied, my voice steady despite the tension simmering beneath. Owen's eyes darkened, his brows knitting together. "But isn't that what family does? Help each other out in times of need?" He leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together, as if holding on to the last strands of his argument. "Help, yes. Enabling? No," I countered, setting my tea down with a gentle clink against the ceramic coaster. "Giving her money every time she asks doesn't really help her in the long run. It's about setting boundaries this time." He shook his head, clearly agitated. "Boundaries? Is that your answer to everything? What about compassion, Bella? Where does that fit into your boundaries?" My heart ached at his words, but my resolve didn't waver. Compassion is teaching her how to manage her life, not clearing. Up her mess every time she calls. My voice rose slightly, a hint of passion threading through my reasoned demeanor. The conversation escalated as Owen's voice grew louder, his frustration palpable. "You're just so rigid, Bella. Can't you bend just this once?" His plea echoed around the small kitchen, bouncing off the walls and settling heavily around us. I breathed deeply, trying to quell the rising tide of my own emotions. "It's not about being rigid, Owen. It's about what's best for everyone involved. We've got our own future to think about, our own stability to protect." Owen stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the tile floor. His movement was a burst of energy that seemed to break the morning calm. "Fine, have it your way. You always do." His words were sharp, a clear reflection of his inner turmoil. He stormed out, the front door slamming shut with a finality that left me alone with my thoughts and the slowly cooling tea. As I sat there, the weight of our argument hung heavily in the air, a prescient echo of the decisions that lay ahead and the potential fallout they might bring. The door's echo hadn't yet faded when I felt the sting of tears threatening to spill. Owen's departure marked not just the end of our conversation, but perhaps the beginning of a deeper rift. My thoughts swirled chaotically as I tried to process our words, our tones laden with more than just concern for Marie. It was about us, about our values clashing like tectonic plates destined to create quakes in our marriage. I sat back down, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and resolve. "I can't just give in," I murmured to myself, feeling the weight of the credit card in my pocket, an object that had become a symbol of contention between us. It was about more than money. It was about principles, about not letting familial love blind us to enabling bad habits. As I stared at the empty seat across from me, I could almost hear Owen's voice, his arguments mingling with my silent rebuttals. Family should help, yes, but not at the cost of our own peace. I whispered into the quiet, the words feeling like a mantra to steady my resolve. The morning wore on, the sun climbing higher, casting shadows that danced across the kitchen floor. Each shadow seemed to echo my thoughts, flickering between doubt and certainty. I knew Owen believed in supporting his sister unconditionally, but where were the boundaries? When did helping become too much? My phone buzzed on the table, a text from Owen. Think about what I said. We need to support Marie. His words, even in text, felt like a plea, a nudge for me to reconsider. I typed a response, my fingers hesitant at first, but then firming as my decision solidified. We need to talk about long-term solutions, not just quick fixes. I'm standing by what I said. We can discuss more tonight. Sending the message felt like drawing a line in the sand, one I prayed he would eventually understand. The rest of the day was a blur of routine tasks, each one performed mechanically while my mind replayed our argument, each replay slightly altering the tone, the words, but never the outcome. I was standing firm, for both our sakes, I reasoned. Someone had to make the hard choices, even if they came with hard conversations. By evening, the tension felt like a thick fog settling over the house. I prepared dinner, setting the table for two, a habit that now felt like an act of defiance. The chair opposite mine remained empty, Owen late as he often was when upset. I ate alone, the silence a stark contrast to the morning's fiery exchange. The clink of my fork against the plate punctuated my thoughts. Had I been too harsh? No. Boundaries were necessary. Not just with money, but also in how much we let others. Problems invade our space, our peace. After dinner, I sat in the living room, the TV on, but my attention far from the flickering images. It was in these quiet moments that doubt crept in, whispering what-ifs and maybes. But beneath those whispers, a firmer voice spoke of necessity, of the need to protect not just our finances, but our future from the constant turmoil of rescuing someone else from their self-made storms. As the night deepened, I found myself at the window, staring out into the darkness, a mirror to the uncertainty that lay within me. Yet, amid that uncertainty, a spark of clarity grew. Tomorrow I would face Owen, armed not just with my arguments, but with a steadfastness born of too many nights spent in worry. Tomorrow, I would make him see that my defiance was not a rejection of his values, but an embrace of a future where we were not perennial saviors, but a couple building a stable, secure life together. The night was restless, a cacophony of ticking clocks and distant traffic blending with my swirling thoughts. I lay awake, the other side of the bed cold and empty, Owen's absence a silent testament to the chasm between us. My mind replayed our last conversation, each word echoing louder in the stillness. The weight of unresolved tensions pressed heavily upon me, like a storm cloud ready to burst. Morning arrived with a gray light filtering through the curtains, mirroring the gloom in my heart. I rose mechanically, preparing for the day with a sense of foreboding that I couldn't shake. As I set the coffee pot to brew, the sound of the front door creaking open startled me. Owen walked in, his face a mask of contrition and something darker, unreadable. He didn't speak as he approached the table where I sat with my morning paper. The air was thick, charged with a silent plea for truce. Yet his next words shattered the fragile peace. Bella, we need to help Marie. I've decided. I felt a chill run down my spine as I met his gaze. Owen, we talked about this. We can't keep doing this. Enough, Bella. His voice cut through the room, sharp and commanding. He reached for the coffee pot, his movements brusque. I'm tired of your refusals. It's my money too, and I will help my sister with or without your consent. The defiance in my heart surged, pushing back against his authoritarian tone. No, Owen. You can't decide this on your own. We are supposed to be partners. My voice was firm, yet calm, trying to inject reason into a conversation veering off course. Owen's face contorted with anger, his hand gripping the coffee pot tightly. Without another word, he hurled the contents across the table. The hot coffee struck my face, scalding pain searing through my skin as I screamed in shock and pain. The room spun as I clutched my face, the pain blistering through my senses. Owen stood frozen, his eyes wide with the immediate realization of what he had done. The coffee pot clattered to the floor, its shattering sound marking the final break in our relationship. I stumbled to my feet, my heart pounding in terror and betrayal. "Owen!" I managed to gasp out, my voice trembling as much as my hands. But he turned away, his shoulders hunched in a mix of defeat and shame. The realization that I was no longer safe in my own home hit me with devastating clarity. The man I had married, the life we had built, had become unrecognizable, corrupted by anger and desperation. Shaking and sobbing, I fled to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. The mirror reflected a woman marred by red, angry burns, her expression one of horror and resolve. As the initial shock gave way to a cold determination, I knew what I needed to do. Owen's violent outburst had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. It was no longer just about financial disagreements or familial obligations. It was about my safety, my well-being. I rinsed my face with cool water, each splash a stark reminder of the reality I could no longer ignore. Today's horror had opened my eyes to a truth I had been reluctant to see. The man I loved was capable of hurting me, not just emotionally, but physically. And I could no longer allow myself to be a victim in my own story. The cold water did little to soothe the stinging burns, but it helped clear the fog of shock that had clouded my mind. As I dabbed my face with a towel, the fabric softly grazing, the tender skin, a deep, unsettling realization settled within me. The home I had cherished as a sanctuary had morphed into a battleground, a place where the echoes of betrayal were louder than the promises of love we had once made. Leaving the bathroom, I walked through the house, each step heavy with the weight of memories and broken trust. The walls that had witnessed our laughter and shared dreams now seemed to close in on me, oppressive and foreboding. I paused by the living room window, looking out at the world that seemed to carry on unaware of the seismic shifts that had just altered the landscape of my life. My reflection in the glass was a ghost of the woman I used to be, marked by the trauma of the morning's violence. The home I had built with Owen, filled with trinkets and photos of happier times, now felt foreign, as if I were a stranger in my own life. The ringing of my phone broke through my reverie, a lifeline thrown across the chasm of my despair. It was CLA, my old friend from college, her name flashing on the screen like a beacon of hope. "Bella, I just saw your text. Are you okay? What happened?" Her voice, warm and concerned, was a stark contrast to the cold silence of the house. I swallowed hard, the words catching in my throat as I tried to articulate the morning's events. "Owen, I'm not safe, CLA. He threw hot coffee at me. It burned me. And..." My voice broke, the reality of the admission cracking the last vestiges of denial. CLA's response was immediate and fierce. "Bella, listen to me. You need to get out of there. Now. Can you come to my place? It's safe here, and we'll figure out what to do next." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me from the edge of despair. The realization that I had somewhere to go, that I wasn't alone in this, fortified my resolve. "Yes, I'll pack a bag and leave. I'll be there as soon as I can." Hanging up, I felt a surge of adrenaline propel me into action. I hurried to our bedroom, pulling out a suitcase and throwing clothes and essentials into it with trembling hands. Each item was a severance from my old life, a step towards reclaiming my independence. As I zipped up the suitcase, I cast one last look around the room. at Owen's things mingling with mine, a tapestry of our life together that I was now tearing apart. It was heart-wrenching, yet necessary. The home that had been my haven was now just a shell, a place devoid of the safety and love it once promised. With the suitcase in hand, I stepped out the front door, the cool air hitting my face with the promise of freedom. As I locked the door behind me, I knew I was not just leaving a house but also leaving behind the illusions of what I thought my life would be. Ahead of me lay uncertainty, but also the possibility of a new beginning, a chance to write my own story on my own terms. The drive to CLA's house was a blur, each mile adding distance between me and the life I had known. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the only anchor I had in a sea of tumultuous emotions. As the familiar streets of my past life faded in the rearview mirror, the road ahead seemed to offer a silent promise of refuge, a chance to mend the fragments of my shattered reality. Arriving at CLA's place felt like crossing into a sanctuary. Her home, with its warm lights and open door, stood in stark contrast to the cold, oppressive atmosphere I had fled. CLA was waiting for me, her presence a solid, comforting force as she ushered me inside. "Bella, I'm so glad you're here," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt like a shield against the world. "You're safe now. We'll figure everything out together." Her words, simple yet powerful, began to ease the tight knot of fear and anxiety that had lodged itself in my chest. We sat down in her cozy living room, a pot of tea between us, and I began to unravel the story, the events spilling out in a cascade of words that CLA received with quiet anger and concern. He's never been violent before, but today, I saw a side of him that terrified me, I admitted, the admission making the ordeal all the more real. CLA listened intently, her brows furrowed in concern. "First things first, Bella. You need to think about your immediate safety. Have you considered calling the police or getting a restraining order?" Her pragmatic approach was a balm, guiding me through the fog of my overwhelmed thoughts. I nodded, feeling the first stirrings of practical resolve awakening within me. "I think a restraining order might be necessary, but I don't even know where to start." The path before me seemed daunting, fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil. "That's okay. I know a lawyer who specializes in family law. I can call her right now. She's helped a lot of women in your situation," CLA offered, her decisiveness lending me a semblance of control. As she made the call, I felt a profound gratitude for her unwavering support, a lifeline thrown in my darkest hour. The lawyer, a woman named Eva, agreed to meet with me the next day to discuss the steps for securing a restraining order and what to expect during the divorce proceedings. The conversation with Eva was illuminating and sobering. She outlined the legal avenues available to me, each step a piece of the armor I needed to protect myself. "You're not alone, Bella. Many have walked this path, and there's a way through," Eva assured me over the phone, her voice firm and encouraging. That night, as I lay in CLA's guest room, the shadows of the day receded slightly, pushed back by the light of newfound hope and the support of my friend. The journey ahead was uncertain and undoubtedly filled with challenges, but I was no longer navigating it alone. With CLA and Eva by my side, I felt a renewed strength to face whatever lay ahead. The morning light filtered through the curtains of CLA's guest room, casting a gentle glow that seemed at odds with the turmoil of my emotions. Today was significant, a pivotal point in reclaiming my life. As I prepared to meet Eva, the lawyer, a mix of nerves and determination buzzed through me. Each step felt heavy yet necessary, as if I were walking both toward freedom and away from a past that had become untenable. CLA drove me to Eva's office, her presence a comforting constant in the whirlwind of change. "You're doing the right thing, Bella. Just remember you're taking back control," she reassured me as we walked into the sleek building that housed Eva's office. Eva greeted us with a warm yet professional demeanor, her office a bastion of calm orderliness. As we sat down, she laid out the documents and spoke in a clear, concise manner. "Bella, based on what you've told me, we can file for a temporary restraining order immediately. This will protect you while we prepare your divorce case." Her words were a salve, soothing the raw edges of my fear. She explained the legal implications, the process, and what outcomes I might expect. Each detail was a thread in the tapestry of my new beginning, woven with the expertise of someone who had guided many before me through these treacherous waters. "We'll also need to discuss the financial aspects, property division, and any mutual assets," Eva continued, her pen poised over the stack of forms that would legally untangle my life from Owen's. "It's important that you think about what you want to take away from this marriage, not just in terms of assets, but also what arrangements need to be in place for your safety and stability." I nodded, absorbing her words, the reality of divorce materializing from the nebulous fear that had clouded my thoughts. It was about more than just ending a marriage. It was about setting the foundations for my future. "Thank you, Eva. I just want to move on, to feel safe again," I expressed, my voice steady, though my heart raced with the gravity of the moment. Eva smiled kindly, her eyes reassuring. "You will, Bella. This is just the beginning of a new chapter for you. We're here to make sure it's written on your terms." As the meeting concluded, Eva handed me a folder filled with information and forms. "I'll be with you every step of the way," she assured as we parted. The folder felt heavy in my hands, each paper a step towards a new life. Leaving Eva's office, the world seemed both daunting and ripe with possibilities. The legal path was laid out before me, a map to a destination of my own choosing. CLA squeezed my hand as we walked back to the car, her smile a mirror of the hope blossoming inside me. That evening, back at CLA's, I pored over the documents, each line a confirmation of my decision. The path ahead was not without its thorns, but I was no longer a passive participant in my own life. I was actively shaping it, with the law on my side, and a newfound resolve to never again let someone else's choices dictate my happiness. The days following my meeting with Eva were filled with a mix of administrative tasks and emotional adjustments. Each morning brought a new challenge, but also a small victory in my journey towards independence. As I filled out forms and organized my documents, I also began to rebuild my inner world, one previously shadowed by fear and uncertainty. CLA was a constant source of support, her home now my temporary refuge. However, I knew I needed to start looking for a job to sustain myself independently. It was during one of our late-night talks that CLA suggested, "Why not try the bookstore downtown? You've always loved books, and it might be a refreshing change." The idea sparked a light in me, a flicker of excitement at the thought of being surrounded by books, a passion of mine since childhood. The very next day, I found myself walking into the quaint bookstore, its shelves a cozy maze of literature and history. The smell of old paper and the quiet whispers of turning pages felt like walking into a sanctuary. The owner, Mr. Dalton, was a kindly man with a gentle demeanor and a passion for stories. As I explained my situation and my love for books, he listened intently, nodding in understanding. "We could use someone with your enthusiasm and love for reading," he said, offering me a position. It wasn't just a job offer. It was an invitation to a new chapter, one filled with promise and new beginnings. Working at the bookstore became more than just employment. It was a therapeutic escape. Each book I shelved, each recommendation I gave to a customer, helped rebuild my confidence and sense of self. The regulars became new acquaintances, and I found joy in small conversations and shared literary passions. Reconnecting with my interests also led me to join a local book club, a group of diverse individuals who gathered weekly to discuss literature and life. These meetings became a highlight of my week, a space where I could share my thoughts freely and listen to others. It was here that I began to feel the threads of community weaving around me, providing a tapestry of support and friendship. As weeks turned into months, my independence grew. The bookstore job allowed me to save enough to rent a small apartment. The day I moved into my own space was a milestone, marked with a mixture of pride and a pinch of apprehension. The apartment was modest, but filled with sunlight and potential. I spent the first night surrounded by boxes of books and personal items, each object a piece of the puzzle that was my new life. Decorating my apartment became a project of love, each choice a reflection of my newfound autonomy. I picked colors that brightened the rooms, hung art that inspired me, and slowly filled the shelves with my favorite books. This space was mine alone, a physical manifestation of my journey from darkness into light. As I settled into my routine, the bookstore during the day, my cozy apartment at night, I began to write. Initially, it was journaling, a way to process my thoughts and feelings. But soon, it evolved into something more, a memoir of my experiences, a story I felt compelled to share. Writing became my catharsis, my way of taking control of the narrative that had once threatened to define me. Months had passed since I moved into my new apartment, and life had settled into a new, peaceful rhythm. The bookstore was thriving, and my manuscript was slowly taking shape, each chapter a testament to my journey and resilience. But an unexpected challenge loomed on the horizon, a final confrontation with Owen. It happened on a crisp autumn day. The leaves were turning, painting the city in hues of gold and red. As I left the bookstore, I noticed two figures waiting by my car. My heart sank as I recognized Owen and his sister, Marie. The sight of them, unexpected and unwelcome, sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Owen stepped forward as I approached, his expression a mixture of regret and defiance. "Bella, we need to talk," he began, his voice softer than I remembered. Marie stood a few feet away, her eyes downcast. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. "I think everything that needed to be said has already been said, Owen." My voice was calm, the product of months of rebuilding my confidence. He shook his head, a familiar stubborn tilt to his jaw. "I'm not here to argue. I just want to settle things peacefully. I've been talking to my lawyer, and I want to finalize the divorce without any more conflicts." His words were surprising, a stark contrast to the man I had faced months ago. Despite my reservations, I listened as Owen outlined what he considered a fair division of our assets. Marie remained silent, her presence a painful reminder of the past I had worked hard to move beyond. My lawyer, Ava, had prepared me for this moment, reminding me of my rights and the strength I had garnered. With a steadiness born from countless hours of counsel and self-reflection, I responded, "I'll have to discuss this with my lawyer. We can arrange a meeting with all parties involved. This isn't the place to make these decisions." Owen nodded, seemingly relieved. "Thank you, Bella. I just want to put this behind us." His voice cracked slightly, revealing a glimpse of the vulnerability he had always tried to mask. As they walked away, a weight lifted from my shoulders. I had faced him, not as the scared woman I had been, but as someone who had reclaimed her life and her voice. The encounter, though brief, was a closure, a finality that I needed to truly move forward. Back in my apartment, I reflected on the meeting. It was a confrontation I had dreaded, yet it had empowered me, reaffirming my decisions and the new path I had chosen. It was clear now that I was no longer bound by the past or by Owen. I was free to continue building a future that belonged solely to me. The days following my encounter with Owen were filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The finalization of our divorce loomed ahead, not as a battle to be fought, but as a formality to be handled with dignity and grace. With each step taken in the legal process, I felt a piece of my old self shed, replaced by the stronger, more independent Bella who had emerged from the trials of the past months. As the papers were signed and submitted, the chapter of my life that included Owen officially closed. It was a bittersweet moment, marked by a solemn acknowledgement of the end of an era and the beginning of another. I left the lawyer's office feeling lighter, as if I had finally stepped out from under a long shadow. Embracing my fresh start, I focused on the things that brought joy and meaning to my life. My job at the bookstore continued to be a source of happiness and fulfillment. The smell of books, the quiet rustle of pages, and the occasional chime of the doorbell as customers entered. All these things wove a tapestry of contentment around my daily routine. My apartment became a true home, filled with laughter and visits from friends, including CLA and new acquaintances from the book club. I decorated with an eye for comfort and aesthetics, choosing vibrant colors and eclectic furnishings that reflected my personality and newfound independence. The manuscript of my memoir progressed, each word a reflection of the journey I had undertaken. Writing it was therapeutic, a way to process my experiences and share them with others who might be seeking the courage to change their own stories. I spent many evenings typing away, immersed in the recounting of my past, transforming pain into empowerment through prose. One particularly bright Saturday, I decided it was time to add another chapter to my life: adopting a pet. I visited a local animal shelter, where I met a small, energetic dog whose joyful demeanor won my heart instantly. Bringing him home felt like adding the final piece to the puzzle of my new life. As weeks turned into months, my life found a new rhythm, one marked by peace and self-discovery. I ventured into hobbies I had previously set aside, like painting and gardening, finding in them the same solace and joy I found in books. Looking back, the journey from the shadows of my past relationship to the light of my current life seemed almost surreal. I had navigated through the storm and found calm waters on the other side. Standing in my living room, surrounded by the life I had built brick by brick, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment and gratitude. With a fresh start, I was not just surviving, I was thriving. My story, once marked by fear and constraint, was now a narrative of resilience and renewal. As I looked forward to the future, I saw not a series of challenges, but a horizon filled with possibilities, ready to be explored and cherished. Years had slipped by since I started my new chapter, and life had settled into a comfortable, enriching pattern. My days were filled with books, my new hobbies, and the companionship of friends and my cheerful dog. I had become a fixture in the local community, known for my resilience and gentle strength. My memoir had been published, resonating with many who sought to overcome their own adversities. One autumn afternoon, as the leaves began their fiery descent to the ground, my past unexpectedly breezed back into my life. I received a call from an unknown number, and when I answered, a timid voice introduced herself as Leah, Owen's current wife. "Bella, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need your help." Leah's voice trembled over the line. "Owen, he's made some serious mistakes, and I've had to report him to the police." The news was a jolt, a stark reminder of a chapter I thought I had closed completely. Yet there was no anger or fear, only a deep sense of pity for Leah. "What can I do to help you?" I asked, my tone calm and assured. Leah explained that the situation had escalated, and Owen had been arrested. The details were painfully familiar, echoes of my own past with him. She asked if I would be willing to testify about my experiences, to help ensure that justice was served. After we hung up, I sat in quiet reflection, considering the implications of stepping back into that dark chapter of my life. It was a significant decision, one that required revisiting painful memories. However, I knew that my testimony could make a difference, not just in Leah's case, but in affirming the importance of standing up against abuse. With a resolve fortified by years of healing and growth, I agreed to testify. The court date was set, and as it approached, I prepared myself to face Owen once again, not as a victim, but as a witness empowered by truth and justice. The courtroom was stark, a stark contrast to the vibrant life I had built. Seeing Owen again was disconcerting, but the weakness in his eyes was evident. He was no longer the towering figure of my nightmares. He was just a man, diminished by his own wrongdoings. As I took the stand, my voice was steady, my words clear. I recounted the past with precision, not allowing emotions to color the facts. Leah watched from her seat, her expression one of gratitude and silent solidarity. When the trial concluded, Owen was convicted, a result of his actions and the courage of those he had wronged. Walking out of the courtroom, I felt an unexpected closure, a final ending to the story that had started so many years ago. In the weeks that followed, Leah and I occasionally spoke, a bond formed from shared experiences. My life continued, enriched and unencumbered by the past. The support I had given Leah was not just a testament to overcoming, but a beacon for those who still struggled in the shadows. As I sat in my garden one serene morning, watching the sunrise paint the sky with hues of hope, I realized that true strength comes from the ability to turn pain into purpose. My journey was not just about survival, but about crafting a legacy of resilience, a narrative that would inspire others to seek their sunrise, just as I had found mine.